And I will go ahead and let everyone in right at noon. I can edit out this first part. Welcome, everyone. We'll give some time for folks to get into the space. We're so glad that you're here with us this morning. Wonderful. And we've just enabled live transcript. So for those of you that like to follow along with the transcript, you'll be able to see this as a feature. I want to welcome everyone. We're just going to take a minute to let folks are still arriving into the space. We've had a wonderful turnout of numbers of registrators, folks that have registered for the event. We're so glad you're all here for this important conversation. We'll get started in just a few moments. Great. And Laura, who is with me, who's going to be presenting. Laura, as I begin to speak, and welcome everyone. If you can help with muting folks and also letting folks into the room as a co-host, that would be helpful. Meant to ask you that earlier.
Yep, no problem.
Still arriving, and we appreciate folks keeping yourself on mute. We are going to have a time for discussion, but so that we can hear the full presentation. You're welcome to keep your cameras on if you'd like to see each other, but if you could keep yourself on mute, that's great. Thank you. Just a couple more people coming in here. Wonderful. Welcome, friends. I know many of you on this call. Some of you, this is our first time meeting, so welcome, welcome. All right. Well, I think we will go ahead and get started because we have a huge presentation today, lots and lots of information. I know you're going to have lots of questions. So I just want to begin by saying good afternoon and welcome to our Affordable Solar, a webinar on available rebates webinar. My name is Susanna Tuttle, and I'm grateful to serve as the Director of North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light and the North Carolina Council of Churches Eco-Justice Connection. I am so pleased for NCIPL to be partnering with Eagle Solar and Light for today's presentation to learn about how solar rebates for nonprofits through the IRA and Duke Energy, how solar leasing works, and the steps you need to take for purchasing and leasing solar in North Carolina today. As we begin, we believe it is important to acknowledge that the land we each reside within and depend upon is Indigenous land. This recognition is just one way we seek to orient ourselves in this work and do the work of justice in our communities. Here in North Carolina, as in every other part of the country, we are on Indigenous land. Our state is home to the highest Indigenous population east of Oklahoma, and acknowledging that the land we each reside within and depend upon is Indigenous land. Today, we honor each tribe, their ancestral land, their presence in North Carolina today, and our commitment to repair the harm of the present and past. I will now uplift that where I live in the town of named Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I reside on the occupied lands of the Eno, Shakori, Occaneechi, and Saponi Native peoples. I invite you to place in the chat your name, the name of the peoples whose land you rely on, where you live. And if you do not know, this is also an invitation to learn. So I'll take a moment for you to do that. I'm going to drop into the chat a resource so that if you don't know what native lands you live on, it's a chance for you to learn. Thank you. As for why we are here today, NCIPL is a multi-faith campaign of the North Carolina Council of Churches broader program currently in development called the Eco-Justice Connection, which focuses on environmental and climate justice. It is our mission to educate, inspire, and mobilize North Carolinians to act on climate change as a moral imperative. Today's webinar comes at a very important moment in our state as we need to move faster and with more of a sense of urgency towards powering our built environment with renewable energy sources. We are blessed to be partnering with Eagle Solar and Light for this affordable solar presentation, and I want to recognize Laura Combs as a leading solar activist in North Carolina, as well as a person who dedicates her time and experience by participating in NCIPL's monthly volunteer-led energy working group. And I'm happy to answer more questions about how you can become involved in our wonderful team of volunteers across the state leading this work. As Laura goes through her presentation, I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions. I will be compiling those for our Q&A section, which we have created a lot of time for discussion. I can assure you that every question will be answered. If not during the time we have together online now, then after the event, we will send out a Google Doc with answered questions along with the webinar recording so that this can be an ongoing conversation. And most importantly, we can get as much solar installed on nonprofit facilities in North Carolina as possible. Finally, it is through your support that we are able to present events like this webinar. And I want to especially thank everyone who made a donation when registering for this event. You are truly making a difference in helping to protect the people and places that we love. And we will use all your financial gifts to bless the world. So with that, I will now pass it over to Laura Combs with Eagle Solar and Light for our inspiring presentation. Laura, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Susanna, and thank you everyone for being here today. And I just want to echo what Susanna said about the Energy Working Group. That is the highlight of my month, to get together with those folks every single month. And the work that they do is inspiring, and it propels me to go further each month as I reach and try to help folks in the nonprofit community, in historically marginalized communities. As you know, Susanna, your land dedication really struck home with me because I've been working and reaching out a lot with North Carolina's state recognized Indian tribes, and so the Environmental Working Group and NCIPL is just one great package of goodness. So thank you for that. So again, my name is Laura Combs, and I am the Business Development Manager at Eagle Solar and Light in the Durham, North Carolina office. And I'm going to just give you a little bit about Eagle Solar and Light and myself before diving in, because we have a lot of really great incentives to talk about, paths towards solar, and I'm excited to share all of that with you. So Eagle Solar and Light was founded in 2016 in Birmingham, Alabama. We opened our North Carolina office about 4 years ago, and we just opened an office in Asheville, North Carolina this year. So we are primarily commercial scale solar installers, meaning businesses or nonprofits or local governments. And we work throughout the Southeast, and with our two main locations being Alabama and North Carolina, but we can also work with folks in Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi. So that's a little bit about us overall. Real quick about me. When I was 8 years old, I had the realization that without clean air and clean water, that the planet would be in a whole lot of trouble, that we might not make it. And my poor parents had to hear about that for years. Eventually, I got a graduate degree in urban and regional planning with a specialty in environmental planning. And I spent years working to recover endangered species and protecting critical ecosystems. But as you know, time moves on, and I've always had an interest in solar, and I'm so grateful to Eagle Solar and Light for allowing me to become part of the team. When I applied for the job, they said, we think this would be a good fit for you in sales, because I have a strong nonprofit background, I have a strong government background, and when I believe in something, I'm just going forward with it. So it's been a great 2.5 years with Eagle Solar and Light. And they're a very innovative group, and we've found a way to bring solar to folks who may normally not be able to access it. So with that, I'm going to dive in and share my screen, jump into the PowerPoint, And certainly type your questions into the chat, and we can take those afterwards and keep this as a more informal conversation. So lots of topics to cover today. Certainly the Inflation Reduction Act, biggest clean energy bill in history, super exciting. The Duke Energy rebate, which is so powerful. Those two factors combined make solar look completely different regarding its availability for folks. So an overview of what I'll be covering. I'm going to give you a brief introduction on solar and how, just generally how solar installations themselves work. Then we'll dive into the Inflation Reduction Act, the Duke Energy nonprofit solar rebate, solar leasing, a bit about the Duke Energy interconnection process. And then if there's anybody here who's from another, who's serviced by a utility that is not Duke Energy, I have a couple of words for you as well, as far as some paths forward. And then finally, I added this at the last minute, but a little bit of an experiential component. So with that, we'll get going. So real quick, Solar 101. Solar, sun, as you know, the sun strikes the solar panel, produces DC or direct current energy. That energy flows into an inverter, which converts the energy or the electricity to AC current, which is what is used by your building. And so your building receives what the panels are producing. That said, if you do not need all the energy that the panels produce at that time, the energy flows out to the utility grid through what's called a bidirectional meter. And that meter will acknowledge the energy you're sending and credit your account with the energy that you've sent. Your panels will not always produce all the energy you need. And in fact, we don't size systems to provide for full meeting your full need unless you want us to. But if it's nighttime, obviously you can't take advantage of solar. If it's an incredibly stormy day, you can't take advantage of solar. And so you'll have to pull energy from the grid. So the electricity will come through the bidirectional meter and head into your building when the panels are not able to keep up with your needs. So an important thing to note is that if the grid goes down, the utility grid goes down, solar shuts off, because for obvious reasons, we can't have electricity flowing into a grid that people are trying to repair. That's a significant safety hazard. So when the grid goes down, solar goes down. And another couple things to note are that the panels are typically warranted for 25 years. The inverters are warranted for 12 years, but when we install systems, we include extra warranty coverage from 20 to 25 years, depending on the inverter. So before I get into the incentives, I just want to take a moment to ask you to think bigger than just solar panels for these incentives. And this is a really neat shot of Oak City Baptist Church in Raleigh. This is one of our customers and a very exciting installation because the congregation has a big vision for renewables, for climate resilience, and they have accomplished step one of their mission, which is to place solar panels on the roof. And we were excited to be chosen to work with them in that. Now we're on to step two, and they want to be that climate resilience center. Oak City was founded right after the Civil War ended, and they serve a low-income community. And so they were founded by freed people right after the Civil War. And they want to be a climate resilience center for their population. And you probably know that underrepresented or underserved people are often hit hardest by climate change. So their goal is to include battery storage in their climate resilience efforts. So we are now working with them to find a path forward to install battery storage so that their surrounding community has a place for medications to come cool off, to come get some food when the grid does go down. So the incentives I'm going to show you from the federal level apply to that battery storage aspect. And it's a really an exciting time to move forward and explore these opportunities. So the Inflation Reduction Act, it has a couple of different incentives that impact nonprofit and tax exempt organizations. And the Inflation Reduction Act does apply to solar installations and battery storage. And it is the incentive for nonprofits who are purchasing either solar installations or battery storage is a direct payment of 30% of the cost of that installation. And that incentive runs through 2032. That incentive can be increased if the nonprofit or tax exempt organization is in an economically distressed area. It can be increased by 10%. And if it is on tribally designated multifamily housing, then there's a 20% increase in that incentive. So economically distressed or tribal areas can get up to 40 to 50% of their installation paid for if they make a purchase. And this incentive begins in 2023. The federal government has to, this is a new part of the federal legislation. So the federal government has to come up with the procedures to move this program forward. And we're expecting to see those procedures in the next couple months. And real quick before I move on, I just want to make a mention. I get this question a lot. People will ask, what is an inverter? What does it look like? And I'm going to show you that graphic again that just kind of explains how solar works. And so this is Jordan. He's our crew lead and amazing guy. Our team is working so well under his guidance. And he's standing next to an inverter. And this is an inverter that is installed at Reverend Dr. Barber's nonprofit, Rebuilding Broken Places. This system should be going live in the next couple of weeks. So you can see Jordan's probably about 5'9", and an inverter sits on the outside of a wall, and you can get a size or a feel for the scale of what the size of an inverter is when it converts that electricity from the panels from DC to AC. And to remind you, this is what it looks like on the diagram. The panels generate the DC current, it goes to the inverter to turn it into AC current. So this is an idea of what that sizing looks like and where it goes. So there are other incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act, and those impact solar leasing because not everybody has the funds in their operating budget to make up the amount, you know, if we're in 2023 and folks have not taken advantage of the Duke Energy rebate, or even in 2022, if folks take advantage of the Duke Energy rebate, not everybody has that extra 40% in their operating budget to complete their solar purchase. And that's where solar leasing comes in, and the Inflation Reduction Act. We have a leasing partner named Sunwell, and I will give you a little more information on them in a couple of minutes. But the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits associated with solar purchasing by companies increased from 26 to 30% with the Inflation Reduction Act. And that has allowed our partner Sunwealth to pass on more savings to the nonprofit and government and tax exempt organizations that we work with. So it has made solar leasing more affordable from that perspective. And as with what you saw on direct pay, there is an increase of 10% if on economically distressed areas and 20% for tribally designated multifamily housing. The last item really isn't a concern because this impacts businesses only, but businesses can actually sell unused tax credits. And this tax credit begins right now, this year. So Sunwealth is able to take that increase from 26 to 30% and pass on more savings to leasing customers. So the Duke Energy nonprofit solar rebate, that has been an exciting incentive in place since 2017. And unfortunately, not enough nonprofits have taken advantage of it. It's the most generous rebate that Duke offers, and they offer it in 3 sectors: residential, commercial, and nonprofit, with nonprofit by far and away being the most generous. And there's about $3 million left in the nonprofit pool of money that must be spent this year. And if it is not spent this year, if nonprofits do not use it up, then it will go over into 2023 and become available for everybody. But the commercial and residential folks, use that money up very quickly. It'll be a lottery system, but even before there was a lottery, and Duke had to move to a lottery because the demand for the rebate in the commercial and residential sectors was so great, but they were using that money up in 3 minutes or less before there was a lottery. So now, to keep things sane, it's a lottery, and we need to get that $3 million used up before the end of this year, ideally. So the maximum nonprofit rebate that Duke pays is $75,000. And that is based on the size of the system. And I'll show you some quick math on that in a moment. But, it does not exceed 75,000, and the smaller the system size, the smaller the rebate. And the rebate applies to purchasing or leasing an installation. And the rebate pays for about 30% of an installation's cost. And when you combine this rebate with the IRA's direct pay of 30%, then the total incentives that a nonprofit can take advantage of is about 60% of the cost of a cash purchase. We're waiting, as I said, for the federal government to roll out the rules on how they're going to be implementing direct pay. And again, that should be available by the end of this year. So, a caution, you're just going to want to check in with your accountant or tax expert, because, we don't have that perfect crystal ball on how the federal government is going to roll this program out. And I want to emphasize that this Duke Energy nonprofit rebate expires at the end of 2022. It can be reserved before then. That does not mean that you have to have your solar installation completed in 2022. The rebate must just be reserved before the end of 2022. And $3 million. I'm hoping we can somehow find a way to get that used up by the end of this year. So how the rebate works. Now it's time for a little bit of math, but some pretty basic and easy math, happily. So the rebate is 75 cents per watt AC installed. The AC amount is based on the inverters that are installed. So 75 cents per watt AC. The maximum system size is 100 kW AC, or 1,000 watts. And that is the key number for calculating what your Duke Energy rebate will be. So for example, and a lot of larger churches are 100 kW AC systems. Schools are often 100 kW is a size that serves them. So 100 kW AC system times 1,000 to convert the kW, kilowatts, over to watts, times the 75 cents per watt that Duke pays for the rebate. So that's how we get to the $75,000 rebate. And we've installed a number of 50 kW systems, and that would be maybe for a smaller church or a nonprofit organization. And so it would be the 50 kW inverter size times the 1,000 watts to convert over to watts times 75 cents. So that's $37,500 for that rebate amount. So if you had a system that was a 40 kW system somebody proposed for you, then you would just multiply 40 times 1,000 times 0.75 and get your answer. And it's important to note that rate increases are here. And in Duke Energy Carolinas territory, on September 1st, a approximately 9% rate increase went into, well, it's a little bit over 9% rate increase went into effect. And what I'm seeing so far as I'm modeling solar projects is that for larger power users, larger churches, for example, that the savings is somewhere between that solar brings an additional savings of $700 to $1,500 a year. And that's based on a set of data points of about 8 proposals. But this 9+% rate increase has had a significant impact on the cost of electricity. And in Duke Energy Progress territory, they are expecting a rate increase of 4.6% for commercial customers or nonprofit customers, and more than that, as you can see, for residential customers. And that rate increase in Duke Progress territory would be December 1st, if approved. I expect that that will be approved, just as it was in Duke Carolina's territory, and that is due to Duke having under-recovered fuel costs, primarily, under-recovered natural gas costs. And I sat in on the Utilities Commission meeting where Duke was making the case for the 9+% rate increase. And they explained that they could not have anticipated the dramatic rise in natural gas prices, and that resulted in over $300 million in under-recovered fuel costs. And they anticipate next year their under-recovered fuel costs will be over $200 million. So we're seeing the first rate increases by that, and it remains to be seen if they will try and recapture those under-recovered costs again in the next year as they do their rate revisions. Solar leasing has been an exciting part of Eagle Solar and Light's work. And Eagle Solar and Light was the first company approved to offer solar leases in North Carolina. And we, in partnership with our leasing partner, Sunwell, now, we are the only ones that we are aware of who have executed leases in North Carolina. And those leases have to be registered at the Utilities Commission. And so, you know, we're thinking we're still the only ones since 2017 to have executed leases. So lessors like Eagle Solar are approved by the North Carolina Utilities Commission, and the commission can examine all the leases. And as I said, Eagle Solar and Light and our partner Sunwealth are the only ones with executed leases as far as we know. And the benefits of leasing are many. As I said earlier, leasing is helpful for nonprofits who do not have sufficient capital to purchase a solar installation. The equivalent of the Duke Energy rebate, nonprofit solar rebate, serves as the down payment usually. Sometimes for different factors like the size of the installation, poor production of the system due to shading, things like that. Sometimes that does not hold that down payment threshold. But usually the equivalent of the Duke rebate serves as the down payment. And the down payment is actually made after the system is commissioned, which is interesting because once the system's commissioned, that Duke rebate check is generally cut about 2 to 4 weeks after the system is turned on. So there's very little, if any, time that there's an impact to a nonprofit's budget. Operations and maintenance of the system is included for the life of the system. And there's a minimum production guarantee of 80%. So a little bit about Sunwealth. They were founded, as you can see, in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2014. They have a strong focus and goal to help make this, to help bring solar to people who need it most. And of course, they work with many different types of nonprofits, but they are a B corporation, a public benefit corporation, and they work throughout the country. But Eagle Solar and Light has kept them very busy in North Carolina. They are working toward meeting UN sustainability goals, which is not on this slide. This is a slide, these slides, next few slides are ones that Sunwealth is allowing me to use. We just recently, actually last week, Sunwealth and I presented together at a Department of Labor Indian Affairs conference in South Carolina. And so they just let me grab some of these slides and share with you all as well. I will give you a moment to read their mission. You don't need me to read that to you, I know. And this will be recorded, I know. So, you know, it'll be available by recording, or I can, you know, ask if I can share this slide with anybody who, you know, may want to see it later. So we have a number of projects with Sunwealth, and just to give you a scope of what kind of work we are doing with them, we install in schools like Carolina Day School. Here's Reverend Dr. Barber's nonprofit, Rebuilding Broken Places in Goldsboro. We have a number, four installations at, this is not my project, 4 installations at Orange Water and Sewer Authority, I believe, and many, many more. And as you can see here, Sunwealth provides 100% project financing, and they do have flexibility to work with our partners and find a solution that best works for them. And together we have installed 27 projects in North Carolina that are leased, and 2.75 megawatts or 2,757 kilowatts installed. So leasing has been going well, but we are here to help folks out and hopefully take advantage of that Duke rebate and bring some more leasing solutions. So the Duke Energy interconnection process is seemingly not many steps, but yet it is a bit of a lengthy process, and we are here, and any solar installer should help their client through this process because there are a number of steps, and you know, we have an amazing project manager, Jack Boyce, and he is the one who facilitates this part of our solar work. So the entire process from start to finish takes about 4 to 8 months, and that can vary largely based on Duke Energy's review times and what it does, but I'm just going to walk you through. Initially, for the leasing process, and actually a lot of this can be applied to just the installation cash purchase process as well, but we have an overview of how solar works, how leasing works, and we provide some general metrics for how leasing could work for that particular client. And if those general metrics seem favorable, then we move forward and we do a financial analysis, and we do a site visit and create a solar design. And what we need is ideally a year of utility bills so that we can ensure that we are modeling a properly sized system. And then if the organization has the electrical drawings, then we are more than happy to take those. That helps with ensuring that the structure is ready for solar. And also we collect photos of the electrical system and the building. And once we have that information, we create a design and a budget and a financial analysis. When we find that comfortable spot, that optimal spot for our clients, then it's time to execute a lease with Sunwealth. And Sunwealth looks at 2 years of financial statements for their underwriting process. And then the lease is generated, and both parties will go ahead and execute that lease. Once that's executed, we move to the interconnection process with Duke, and we file a report of proposed construction and some notarized documents and stamped single line drawings that our clients will be prompted to sign by Duke, but we do it all on behalf of the clients. And then we do the rebate application at the same time. Once the application is, Duke does a quick review, and then they say, yes, this is complete, and that rebate amount is reserved at this point. So once that initial paperwork is received and acknowledged as being complete, Duke does an analysis of the proposed project and its impact to the grid. And for smaller projects, they complete that analysis in about a month. But for larger projects of 20 kW or more, that analysis can take 3 to 6 months, but it generally does not go that long, not out to 6 months. Once Duke says, yes, the interconnection process is fine and everything is ready to move forward, then we have 1 year to get that system on the roof or on the ground near your building. Once Duke says yes, we move to the permitting process, and we work with the local authority having jurisdiction. That permitting process can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And then we move in, once we get the permits, we move to the installation phase. And that installation phase can vary depending on the size of the system. Obviously, the more panels you have to lay down, the longer it will take. The type of roof we're installing on, the weather, there's a number of factors that can impact that installation time. Once the installation is complete, then the bidirectional meter that I mentioned previously, that credits your bill if you are not using all the energy that solar produces, and it bills you if you have to draw from the grid. That bidirectional meter is installed from Duke, and that happens, it can happen faster, but about 2 weeks after the installation is complete. Once the meter is there, it's about 1 to 3 days for the system to be commissioned or turned on. Once the system is on, SunWealth will invoice for the down payment and the yearly lease amount after the commissioning. And the rebate check is sent typically 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes faster, after the bidirectional meter is installed. So time out of budget could be minimal to none for a nonprofit who is seeking a solar lease. For other utility customers who are not Duke Energy, who do not have the opportunity to take advantage of the rebate, solar from a leasing perspective and from a purchasing perspective obviously is harder. If someone is not offering you 30% of the cost of the system, then that is obviously a financial impact. So some of the factors we look at for folks who are outside of Duke territory is, does the utility have net metering, which is the process where a customer who is generating more power than they're using can sell that power back to the utility provider. Without net metering, solar payback does become more difficult. Does the utility have any solar incentives? And will they allow a lease? SunWealth is always working to find better, more efficient and effective ways to create leasing opportunities. And they have successfully leased in other parts of the country where there is not a Duke Energy type of an incentive. So it doesn't mean leasing's out of the question, but it also may become very difficult. And yeah, I guess that is about the end of what I had to say in regarding the more formal part of the presentation. I just want to close by giving you a look at our crew. I think every presentation should have an acknowledgement of their crew. These guys they work so hard, especially the summer is brutal. I've been out there. When I first came on with Eagle, I went out and learned with them, and it is incredibly hard work. And they are a great group of guys, and just want to acknowledge them because they're kind of the superheroes, and without them, we wouldn't obviously have solar installations. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and happy to take some questions. And then I do actually have a little bit of an experiential activity to do after we dive into a few questions.
Wonderful, Laura. Thank you so much. That was such an awesome presentation with so much information. We have had incredible questions come in, and what I'm going to do is actually for you, Laura. So you have this in front of you. I'm gonna send this to you into the chat really quick so you can be looking at where I've compiled the document, but I'm also going to go through and ask them for you so that you don't have to worry about the questions themselves. But thank you everyone for your participation. Already so much activity. We have over 80 people on this webinar. This is incredible. Just think if every single one of us took advantage of these rebates. Laura, you said, did I hear the number $3 million available in the form of rebates for nonprofits?
Yes, there's almost $3 million available.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So we're going to go through these questions as they came in and then keep them coming. And I will continue to add them to this document, which also you'll be able to receive a copy with the answers to the questions as well. So I'm just going to start from the top. Are school districts included in municipalities?
Well, clearly they're not a municipality, but they are a tax exempt organization. So yes.
Great. What's the legal definition of economically distressed area? Is there a website to figure this out?
So yes, there is, and we have access to the information that the federal government used when creating the IRA. It remains to be seen whether or not that will actually be, if that exact information will ultimately be adopted into their procedures. So I can't post it immediately handy, but I can get some information.
So we'll put that together in the resources.
Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Is the 2023 start date for the IRA direct payments tied to the contract date or the install date?
My understanding, but we do not have yet the federal rules. So we have to wait for those federal rules. But my understanding is that it would be tied to the start of the install date. But we don't have rules yet. So do not hold that possible. It is possible. And I'm guessing the reason folks are asking is, can you reserve the Duke Energy rebate and then hold off doing anything until the direct pay incentive is available? And yes, we can work with people on ensuring that we can, that can happen, that possibility.
Excellent. Excellent. So we'll keep, you're going to help keep me updated, and I'm going to help keep other people updated on all of the information that comes out about the IRA, which is, you're right, rules are still being made. So are all of the tax credits retroactive to 2022, even the direct pay an additional 10% and 20% credits, or only the increase from 26% to 30%?
Oh, retroactive to 2022. I am, I do not have an answer for that, but I think Randy Lucas is on this call.
Okay, I'm gonna put a pin in that one. I'm marking these so that we can open it up to larger conversation, because we're gonna have time today. What is the average cost to install a 100 kW solar system?
Average cost would be somewhere around $225,000, but there's caveats with that, because folks have different goals. And so, some folks want to have their AC size, which is what is driven by the inverters, to be similar to the DC size. And so, but we have more wiggle room on the DC size. So we can make a system a bit larger on the DC size. And so it's about 225,000, but it could be a little bit more, depends on the people and their goals.
Okay, that's helpful. I have a question. This is a great question. One member of our planning committee says we should not be installing solar on our less than ideal roof structure. Estimates show solar on our roof would produce about 85% as much power as an ideal installation. What can I say to help get this member on board?
Without having more particulars, and I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards, I'd encourage you to contact me. But without more particulars about why they feel your roof would underproduce, it's hard to directly answer that question. If it's a shaded roof and sun hardly hits it, then yes, solar is a tough case to make. But there are different technologies available, optimizers that can be used. And I guess I would just like to be able to chat with you more offline and learn about the concerns of why solar is thought to be underperforming.
And that's a perfect example of why it makes sense for us after this webinar to continue the conversation. And Laura, I know you're ready to do an analysis for any project available, anyone that's out there looking at solar, so that we can be able to answer these questions. So that's an exciting opportunity. And I know you'll share your contact information and this presentation. And so being able to move forward by making sure that we can take advantage of these rebates this year. Here we are already in the middle of September, obviously. obviously. So moving folks forward quickly is in that fierce urgency of now, as we like to say. So here's a question. You're probably going to know better about what the question actually is addressing, but what does the minimum guarantee of 80% actually mean?
So when we create a solar design and we model or estimate the production in kilowatt hours, and so in leasing, we have that 80% guarantee, meaning that the system will produce at least 80% of the kilowatt hours that we model.
Oh, that's, yeah. And if it, so what happens, I'm just answering a follow-up question. What happens if the install takes place and it ends up producing 75%? What would you do?
We would have to adjust or find a solution for that, but that doesn't happen. Our systems are producing in the mid 90s of what we model, and at times overproducing. If there's a problem with the system, if an inverter gets cranky, what have you, then of course, as part of the leasing arrangement, we are out there to provide the service, get everything up and running again. And it hasn't been an issue. I mean, we're hitting our projections pretty darn well.
Awesome. If a design to install solar panels includes the fabrication of a structural frame to hold the panels, thinking of a non-roof installation on the property, are those costs considered a part of the amount a rebate is based on?
Yes, I'm imagining that they're talking about a ground-mounted system, maybe, which we do.
Yes, that's the case, ground-mounted.
Okay, very good. Yes, so that is all included in the cost of the system, and the rebate can be applied to that as well as the direct pay option.
Awesome. How many square feet of roof is required for 100 kW of solar panels?
So my director's on this webinar, and I'm going to ping him if he doesn't mind, because I do not have that answer.
Can I find you, Scott? I'm going to bring you in here.
Hey, everybody. I'm Scott. If I'd known I was going to be on camera, I'd have combed my hair. So it's about 5,000 square feet for a 100 kW system, give or take. So that includes racking. There's also some setbacks that the authority having jurisdiction, the inspector is going to require. So you look around 5,000 square feet, give or take a couple hundred. And one other question of what happens if we hit 75%? We got to pay.
Oh, yeah,
That's why it's guaranteed. Yeah, we got to pay if we do that. And so obviously we feel pretty confident in our modeling because we wouldn't offer to pay you unless we were pretty confident we weren't going to pay you. So that's just part of that. But I'm going to go off the screen now.
That's why I'll take you off screen. But thanks for that, Scott, because that's why I asked that question, because I do know of a church that it turned out the system wasn't operating in the way that it had been modeled, and the company came out and actually added additional panels at no cost to the congregation because the company guaranteed their projections. So the goodwill of this intention is what I'm trying to address, is that we're working in partnership, and you absolutely will receive what a company is guaranteeing you. And if you don't, call me and I'll make sure you get what you need. Thanks for that. So the next question that we have is here. Where was I in my queue? Are there any particular structural requirements for a roof on which panels would be installed?
So we have a structural analysis that's completed because we need to be sure that the roof can handle the weight or the load of the solar installation. And that's what if there are building plans, then the engineer can look at that early and upfront. And if not, then the engineer is going to have to go out and take a look and do whatever measurements and calculations they need to ensure that it can handle the weight of the roof, or the roof can handle the weight of the installation. And, some roofs are not built to handle the installation of solar. pre-engineered buildings can be difficult for solar. Sometimes it's a no-go. Sometimes panels have to be placed just along the main beams. So each situation's different, but the project should not move forward unless you've got that engineer's approval.
Yeah, that's super important. And the way in which the company works with the physical site is, that's sort of the starting point. And then not on this webinar, but in the future, I look forward to talking about opportunities where congregations, nonprofits, communities can become involved in community solar projects. So if it's not right for your building, there's still opportunities to be engaged in solar. So I'm looking forward to thinking about how we can educate around that moving forward as well. But back to the questions. What would be the absolute latest a customer could contact you and still qualify for the rebate this year?
So me personally, I will be around until December 20th. By the way, Scott, I'm sending you an email about holiday leave, but yeah, we will be working right up until the holidays. So, technically I imagine, although Duke will be closed on New Year's Eve, but we will help folks until we can't.
Okay, excellent. And what are the estimated costs of SunWealth's consulting fees?
SunWealth does not have a consulting fee, and they have a business model that works where they can make solar achievable and affordable and still bring value to their investors and the people that they work with.
So awesome. Another question, is 3-phase service required?
No, it's not. It can,
Okay.
it can be split phase. So we have, when we go assess a project, if we have an interested customer, we will go out and study the electrical panel and gather all the information to ensure that we're providing the proper equipment, inverters, what have you, in order to make the project successful.
Awesome. With leasing, does the nonprofit ever own the panels?
So great question. So when leasing, leases generally go 25 years. Sometimes they might go into 30. Ground mounted systems are often good candidates for 30-year leases. But after the lease is over, the customer has a couple of options. They can purchase the equipment at what's fair market value, which is a really small amount, like ridiculously small. They can ask for the equipment to be removed, and they can enter into a new arrangement with Eagle and SunWealth, or SunWealth and Eagle will remove the equipment and there's no cost to the customer.
Great. Yeah, I love the leasing idea. Often, when I'm working with congregations that don't have the upfront money to engage with solar, and even if they do have, some of it, in many situations for ministry, it doesn't make sense to necessarily have all your assets up on your roof. And so the leasing scenario is really one that I want to see a lot more congregations take advantage of. So that's great. I know if anyone's interested in leasing, please do reach out to Laura. As she mentioned, Eagle Solar and Light is the only company in the state that is working with nonprofits to implement leasing. So our proud #1 partner in leasing is Eagle Solar and Light. This is a comment, and I do hope that who wrote it does reach out and talk with you directly, Laura, but just going to mention it. A rare situation, the town of Waynesville owns electric and has net metering for commercial, but not for nonprofit. And so this person is probably going to have a lengthy separate conversation with you, but I think that that's an interesting example of how where we live, especially those of you in electric co-op settings, have very different scenarios. And we want to make sure that you're able to take advantage of solar, and also that NCIPL and our partners can become advocates for what it is that you want to see in your service territory if it does not already make it available. So I'd like to talk about the what we can do for the town of Waynesville as well, and serve as advocates for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's really interesting. And, each local government has its own personality, but there are small local governments who are adopting net metering policies, and they still don't even have solar installed in their territories. And I think that it's just kind of, well, as I said, everybody has their own personality, but it might just be a lack of awareness. And, it can be fairly, local governments can be more nimble in that regard. And I will say shout out to Waynesville, because I did contact the city of Waynesville to talk about solar, and grateful for any, I'm sorry?
Thank you. I'm the Waynesville person, but we're truly a guinea pig. We're the first house in the town to have solar in 22. So I'm very interested in the question of whether we get the rebate for 30% or not, if it's retroactive.
Oh, yeah.
Talk with you all further about this for our church.
So, okay, so you're talking about the direct pay then from the federal government.
Right. That was earlier question. Yeah. I wasn't clear on the answer.
Okay, yeah, I do not believe that's retroactive. We'll see, but my understanding is that starts in 2023. So unfortunately, no. And without being Duke Energy customers, well, and you've already installed, but I think that your chances of incentives are not there. And actually, the direct pay 30% would only apply to your church, so that would work. But as far as for you as any private owner, that would be an investment tax credit write-off, which only businesses and individuals can take advantage of. So
yeah, thanks for those. These are the kinds of questions our energy working group are very interested in as well. So we want to continue this conversation about next steps, and we'll try to put together a FAQ fact sheet for all of these different questions.
And my understanding, and again, Randy Lucas is on this call, so you might want to write that name down because he's an energy tax expert. At least I think he is. I thought I saw his name. But because you installed in 2022, you should be able to get more on the investment tax credit, the 30%. But talk to your accountant.
Good afternoon, Laura. Hey, thank you.
Randy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi. I'm sorry. So the law is a little bit confusing in start dates and when things are eligible. But I think if I was following the questions, an install in 2022 is now eligible to go back up to 30%. It was 26% at the beginning of the year, or anytime during the year up until the sign of the enactment of the law on August 16th. So now it's 30% tax credit. The direct pay has not started yet, and that does not apply until projects that are placed in service into 2023. So I think you got a little bit of a dichotomy of, some incentives are going to be available now, and the Duke Energy rebate for nonprofits is now, and that's kind of has a time limit on it, and it may be available in 2023, but I think we're kind of caught between two different incentives and the calendar, and that's a little bit unfortunate. But I think if I understand the question, I think that's the right course. And again, I appreciate the discussion, Laura, and you're doing great on the tax stuff. So keep going. I like the sunlight on you too. That's nice.
Thank you, Randy. That was the right answer for me personally.
Okay, good, very good. If I could get a second, I think one of the things that's very important in this overall theory of change of the Inflation Reduction Act is that these incentives are here and it's well funded, and we've got a 10-year runway. Basically, they want these buildings to get upgraded, and I would really underscore and endorse Laura's comment about thinking bigger, because I think all buildings, even our homes and our offices, as well as our churches and facilities, housing, everybody needs to be thinking about how can I make the building more efficient and utilize these tools. And these incentives are there. And I would also underscore not thinking bigger that another thing we're going to see is an increase in the purchases of electric vehicles and transportation. So there are tax credits that are tied to, if you're considering these systems for your roof, they also want to consider there's solar canopies that could be a solution. There are charging stations which have a tax credit because more people are going to start investing in electric vehicles, which also has a tax credit. So there's a lot of things going on, but the think bigger, I can't think that I may use that in another presentation, Laura. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and we'll get back to that, but I got to say, I met Randy earlier this year. We were brought together by a common friend, and we actually presented together at the State Energy Conference, and that's the day I met him. And every time I see him, he makes me smile, and I cannot recommend him highly enough. If you have questions, he's my go-to person to pick his brain. So anyway.
Thanks for jumping in here, Randy. Appreciate it.
Indeed. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And I recognize that a lot of folks might have to jump at 1. We are at the hour. We have scheduled this until 1:30 so that we can continue to answer the questions. If you do need to jump off, you will receive a copy of this recording. I'm going to include the questions that were asked so that you can go back and sort of follow the conversation along, because I'm hoping that the recording and the presentation is something that you will bring back to your community, especially if you're up against any resistance to moving forward. We know that nonprofits particularly move often very slowly in their decision making. It's done by committee. We gotta love committees. But the timing of all of this is very important. And so, in taking the next couple of weeks before we get into the holidays, because we know that things change then too, as far as where folks are focused. And I think, one of the best ways that we can show, we often in the faith community talk about solar panels as billboards for creation care. I mean, this is it. The time is now, as we know what we're facing with the climate emergency and what people of faith and conscience should be doing in this moment. And the fact that all of these incentives are available, moving, whether it's from 2022 from one program into 2023, just getting folks to move. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I don't want to hear about 2 congregations or 2 places. These panels should be everywhere at this point, and we know that. So if you have to jump off, thank you for being with us. But we're going to keep going back to the questions.
And Suzanne, I just want to tag on to that real quick. One thing I tell people when they consider solar, and certainly solar is an action of conscience, at least for me, but finances can't be separated from that often.
Right.
And it either makes financial sense or it doesn't. It's a low stress decision. If it doesn't make financial sense, don't do it. But if it does, then think real hard about doing it, but think quickly.
And that's where I think, we're not having enough conversations about leasing. I think folks feel that it's a cost barrier because, and I know as well as anyone, we're often just passing the collection plate just to keep the existing lights on, much less trying to figure out how to do a capital campaign, to do, a whole big fundraising. I mean, that's what we do as nonprofits. And I can say personally, as one of the people and many others on this call, as part of our NCIPL Energy Working Group, we worked very closely. First of all, we advocated for the solar rebate at the legislature. Then once it became law as part of House Bill 589, we sat down with Duke Energy and became the advocates for the premium product of the rebates, reminding them that we don't have the other kinds of tax incentives that for-profit and residential customers have. And Duke agreed. That's why we have all of these rebates that are, where the premium up to $75,000 per system for congregations, is because many of you on this call, made it, very, very clear that we needed that, because we have money in our communities to take care of our neighbors, to take care of the people and places that we love, and investing in solar is a part of that process. So so it's a win-win situation for communities of faith to be involved in solar. And I'll give a shout out, and Randy Lucas did put his contact information for tax and energy consulting. Fantastic. Thank you, Randy, for doing that. So as we get back into the questions, if you happen to be on this call and have installed solar, we'd love to know it. I'm going to be saving this chat, and I just want to celebrate all of you that have already moved forward. And maybe I know of congregations that installed, way back in the early 2000s, and they just went for it. I mean, solar was expensive, but the community of faith believed that it was, part of their call to care for God's creation, to get solar on their roofs. So kudos to all of you that went forward even without all of these incentives. But now that they're made available, let's really take advantage of them. So another question: does Duke still wipe out all credits not used annually at the end of their fiscal year?
Every June 1st, Duke wipes the credit slate clean. So they take all your unused credits on June 1st.
June 1st. Okay. Right when we're coming into the summer solar season, right?
Yes. And one of the ways, or one of the things we look at, is to try and find that sweet spot for a solar installation and minimize giving away those credits to Duke on June 1st. Because typically, if you're not in Waynesville or in the mountains, your high use times are in the summer. And so, in the spring, solar is ramping up, but people aren't using as much electricity. So they're getting credits in March, April, May that they can't use because June 1st comes and Duke says, thank you very much. So, we try and meet the organization's needs as far as their goals for offset of their utility bill. If they're concerned about free energy to Duke, we will work and adjust and massage those metrics.
Thank you for that on your side. And as an advocate, it makes me think about some other campaigns of how potentially we can help influence the benefits to particularly nonprofits with some changes to the design of the programs. So here is a question. It's highly unlikely we could install solar on our church roof because of its historically significant tile construction.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of these policy incentives provide for a given nonprofit, a church in this case, to participate in a different nonprofit's project and or to install their own project off-site? Great question.
Oh, that's beyond me. You can, your project for your location is the rebate, the incentives, all of that is tied to your location and your meter. So it's not like you can give your share up over to somebody else. And then I'm guessing that church is in a historic district, which makes things tough. And also we do not install solar on slate roofs. So, if there's not a ground mount opportunity or a carport opportunity on site where there could be solar carports installed, which those are expensive, I think that organization is not going to be able to participate in those rebates. And, they could not install solar and then have it sent off to, let's say, a low-income community. That's just not possible either. So,
It makes me wonder, if the person that asked that question wants to direct message me, I would love to have a conversation about this, because that collaboration is really part of what is we're living into the new way of how we want to work together in community and particularly in community solar projects. So I will definitely look forward to following up on that question, because I think it's really important. And, we have majestic churches all over the place that we understand with the historic significance of the building, but that shouldn't eliminate opportunities for ministry to take place with regards to renewable energy. So thank you for asking that.
And I'm actually going to tag on to that, Susanna. We need to talk about, and hopefully I can influence this when I'm at NCSEA, is there needs to be an update of the historic district, like a historic code template or something for historic districts, because so many churches are prevented in historic districts from installing, and it isn't because of the slate roof. It's just because of the district rules. So
Oh, that's really important.
yeah, so we need to file that away for later.
Conversation. Great. You kind of answered this, but I'm going to go back to it just because it's good to hear it again. We just got solar in spring 22, so want to know if the 30% applies to us.
No, not the direct pay 30%.
Okay. Our church has a terracotta roof. Can these panel brackets be mounted through a terracotta roof? Are there panel manufacturers working on a terracotta solar tile for roof replacement designs in the coming years?
We do not install on terracotta. You might find somebody who does. There's a lot of terracotta in Florida. And I'm not familiar with any technologies that are being developed in that regard. Doesn't mean it isn't true. For folks with slate roofs, there are some really neat solar tiles that are being developed, that have been developed and deployed. Europe is leading the way in that regard, and those are sharp looking roofs, and it's a solar shingle, and kind of similar to the slate. I was really surprised and impressed by how they look, but they don't produce as much power as a traditional solar panel.
Okay, thanks for that. And these are great questions because we're going to find answers for these that we can't answer. There, like you said, a lot of terracotta roofs in Arizona and other places. They might be installing solar on them. Hopefully they are. What's the average amount of sunlight per day that solar panels have to receive to be viable?
That would vary with the season. And this is not my strength, just lack of exposure to it. But there's the peak kilowatt production window. And my director will jump on and correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it depending on the season, but generally from 10 to 2. But the amount of sunlight per day, I can't say for certain. But actually, let me show this really quickly, if you don't mind, for whoever asked that question. This is, let's see. Are you guys seeing my project sunroof right now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Google Project Sunroof. And if you're interested to know how much sun you get or how favorable your roof is, this is a great place to go get a quick peek. And ignore this stuff here on the bottom with the numbers. It tends to be overly optimistic. And so I would not rely on this 1,539 hours of usable sunlight per year. Solar installers have their own modeling programs that are I think, more precise. But this is a roof of a church that I'm working with, and they are only going to install on this part, and they asked for panels through the entire roof. But the production wasn't as strong overall as we would have liked. And so I was explaining that to them, and I showed them this picture. And what is neat about it is that we realized that if we pulled the panels off of this portion and made a bit smaller system, that they would get more solar for the panels per panel installed by focusing over here. So you can go ahead and type in your address for your location and see what solar means. You can see here, this is a bad, not a good location for solar. This building next door, this great roof here is nice for solar. So this just gives you an overview of what solar could mean.
And is this telling you, will you drop that link into the chat, please?
Oh, sure.
And is this telling you at a certain time of day? Like when you model it, do you say like, this is what it looks like at 2 p.m. This is what it looks like at 10 a.m.
It is, and actually I'm reading right now because I don't want to, Google Earth imagery to analyze your roof shape, local weather patterns. And they don't give those details on the front page, but it has its strength to let you know just how bad is my shading from this tree or the steeple, or it kind of gives you a little insight. And I found that the people I work with are interested to see that.
Absolutely. And what also is really exciting, I remember way back when I first started trying to help congregations even think about solar, and rather than, because it can be a little overwhelming, of course, to if you don't know that you should call Eagle Solar and Light or Yes Solar or Southern Energy Management or any of the many wonderful companies that are out there, and you're just trying to Google online, is my roof even a good spot for solar? The ability to go to this website, but then also to call you and have you help navigate, because I wouldn't necessarily even know how to use the program. But we found, that if you're just thinking, oh, I would love to have solar on my congregation, but I know that it's going to be a really hard sell because we're putting on a new, children's wing or whatever it is, and our money's wrapped up. Well, the first thing to do is to find out if it's even appropriate before you start trying to push all the buttons at all the levers in the community. And so just to reach out, you can do this modeling without even having to come to their house, come to the site.
Yeah, yes, but before we do that, we do like to, make a visit to ensure, because when we model or create a proposal, we want to make sure that we're doing it with the proper equipment. And in order to ensure we have the proper equipment, we need to see the electrical panels and
Okay,
the
that makes
transformer and that kind of thing.
that makes a ton of sense. Here's a great question. What sort of maintenance is required for solar panels? Do they have to be periodically cleaned?
Well, for leasing, with the operations and maintenance included, we come out once a year and clean and inspect the system and do any kind of preventative work that may need to be done. So, do solar panels have a lot of moving parts? No. So that's, obviously less chance for any kind of breakdown or glitch, but, over time, corrosion and wires and things like that can occur. And so, we're out there every year to make sure everything's okay. And then, of course, if there is a hiccup in the system, if the inverter gets cranky or some wires go down or whatever, we're there to take care of that as part of a leasing cost.
And what about if the nonprofit owns it outright? Should we be maintaining it and getting up there once a year and wiping the panels down?
Yes, the wiping the panels down certainly can be helpful, and each situation's unique or different as far as what the panels are exposed to and the locations and what industry or what have you may be around. But so the wipe down is a good thing, but I think just having that inspection is a good thing as well. To make sure everything continues to function optimally.
Is it pretty standard that if when you select a company to do the install, that you are building that relationship over time? You don't, you would just stay in touch with them and ask them to come back out?
Right, yeah. And so we offer operations and maintenance agreements for people who do purchase.
Okay.
And if it's a little thing and someone hasn't bought an O&M, I will say that, we're just gonna go take care of it. But it's if it's, something that we can easily handle and deal with, but, ideally we'd be charging for a truck roll and, that kind of thing, unless they purchase an O&M agreement.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just like any HVAC or anything else. They're gonna,
Exactly. And this next question dovetails with this, like, are there guarantees, or what if any guarantees come if you purchase rather than lease?
So with purchasing, we include the first year of operations and maintenance with that purchase. And, then we're available afterwards if anything should go wrong.
Awesome. How is the lease option calculated?
So Sunwell is responsible for that. And I do not know what they do to do that. They look at, how well the system's producing and the amount of savings. And I don't know what metrics they use when they calculate.
Okay, and I'm gonna drop Sunwealth's website into the chat too, because I just think it's a really beautiful mission. I'll just share it right now. It says, we invest in a better energy future by financing and managing solar projects that benefit diverse communities through clean power, carbon reduction, cost savings, and job creation. We partner with skilled local solar installers like Eagle Solar and Light, community organizations, and local businesses and investors to change who benefits from renewable energy by changing the way we invest in it. And that is just a wonderful mission. I'm going to drop their website into the chat, lifting up that good work. How long is the average lease for?
25 years.
Awesome. Are there rebate options for power walls through Duke Energy?
Ooh. I haven't even thought about that, but I'm sure my director knows the answer. I think Duke is coming. I think Duke is bringing battery rebates. I can't speak to that.
Okay, we will find out. Is it possible to lease new construction projects?
Is it possible to lease new? It's a newly constructed building, and to put a project on that, yes.
And perhaps as it's, I wonder if it's, and perhaps the person who asked the question could come on. I'm wondering if, as you're doing a new construction process, if the solar becomes part of that project rather than a separate, I'm not sure. I'm just assuming. I know a lot of congregations are doing some new construction. And so I do think I've worked with the US Green Building Council for a long time, and the whole integrated design process, if you want to have solar be a part of the new construction process, the earlier that you can integrate that design, the better off you're going to be, for sure. So, as far as thinking about the leasing option in relationship to the construction project, I'd be curious, Laura, if you've ever had an opportunity to sit down with like a design team and talk about how solar would be integrated to the entirety of the building, rather than just thinking about what the building looks like and then putting solar on afterwards.
I have not had that opportunity. Maybe Scott has, I'm not sure. I guess he'll pop on if he has.
But would you welcome that opportunity, or would that be something that would?
I think that would be neat, really neat, because the effectiveness of the building is just going to be all that much stronger. So yeah, absolutely.
That's what we've really encouraged. And again, the reference of the integrated design process is that ideally every new construction project is going to have renewable energy as a part of it, so we can get to net zero and have actually buildings be producing all the power that they consume. And so if you are thinking about any new construction, think about solar as part of the building and not as something that you put on after the project, so that you're designing the project with the solar as a central part of the operations of the facility. So appreciate that question. And I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your details because I'd like to expand on it. Someone asked, can solar panels be placed on flat roofs? And actually, absolutely, yes. That's a flat roof is an ideal roof. I want to give a shout out to our North Carolina Council of Churches offices are located in West Raleigh Presbyterian Church across from NC State. And the only place the solar panels are on that church are on the flat roof side of the building, because they do have a historic roof and it's a very high peaked roof, and it made sense to use the flat roof. And I'm working with other congregations where the best spot for their solar is not on the congregation facility roof at all. It's actually on their parking deck, on the top of the parking deck. So I want to toss it back to you, Laura, to talk a little bit about ideal roofs. You can do them anywhere, but like you said, even the you showed other projects. Thanks.
So you're seeing my projects with Eagle Solar Screen?
Yep. You want to go into full present?
Am I not there?
I just see.
Oh, I see. Yes, I gotcha.
You got, yeah.
Yeah, one second, let me see if that happens. So it gets bigger. Apparently it doesn't feel like it. Oh, there it goes.
There it goes, yay.
So flat roofs, absolutely. And, flat roofs are great and actually, can be a faster installation, and faster installations mean less money because you have the crew there, for less time. And so rebuilding broken places, we put 2 installations over here at Reverend Barber's place. And because this is one building with actually 2 separate meters. And so you get 1 Duke rebate per utility meter. I should have said that. So they got 2 rebates, and it's all on this roof here, which you can see is flat. Actually, this roof has the teeniest of slope, but it's just tiny. Wait, yeah, so this is clamped on, excuse me. Orange Water and Sewer Authority, this is definitely a flat roof. Ignore what I just said about this one. I have too many roofs to keep track of. Orange Water and Sewer Authority, flat roof installation, and that project weighs more because of the way the panels are anchored. So, we want to make sure we get the engineering correct, and that the roof can handle the additional weight, because we do have to anchor it down, but we do not puncture the roof in that regard.
Awesome. This is a perfect way. Y'all have been amazing as participants, because we're coming up on the hour and a half. I am excited to save the chat and go through and look at all of the exciting projects that have been dropped into the chat. Thank you for sharing. The one right here with First Friends meeting, just, learning about all of these different, where solar is in the state, I'll just say. And NCIPL, we are in the process of redesigning our website in partnership with the North Carolina Council of Churches, and we plan on having an entire part of our site that is going to be featuring your projects. So if you have not contacted us and let us know about your solar, or about your interest in solar, but especially if you've installed solar, we would like to do a success story. And I have a new colleague, Ren Martin, who would be more than happy to interview you. And if you haven't already written your solar story, we want to do solar celebrations and really be featuring a different congregation or a nonprofit in the state in each of our e-news letters and our weekly e-news. So great way to tell the story. It's always so wonderful, especially denominationally. I know Gary Smith has dropped in his information, and when United Church of Christ in Raleigh, UCC Raleigh, installed, every time a UCC church calls me, I send them straight to Gary because brothers in faith and sisters in goals with regards to renewable energy. So connecting folks across denominations, but then across our congregational network, and then again with additional nonprofits as well. That's our aim. We're coming up on the end, and I just wanted to say that we do love to participate in ceremonies and blessings of solar installations. I've given sermons on the solar Sundays when the solar's being honored. We've had solar parties, so I'm happy to help organize that, and also draft press releases and public announcements. If you have installed solar, you deserve credit, and we want everyone to know that you're doing this good work. I'm going to drop into the chat some resources that you might already be aware of through National Interfaith Power and Light of Congregational Solar. Again, I'm dropping in Gary Smith's email here. We are going to meet tomorrow. We meet normally on the third Wednesdays of each month at 2 p.m. And it's an online Zoom meeting with some of the greatest human beings you'll ever meet. We have these conversations, the meetings are always too short because we have so much to talk about. And one of the key things that we've been working on with North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light is the North Carolina Carbon Plan. So I just wanted to make sure you all were aware that next Wednesday, we will be doing an entire webinar on the North Carolina Carbon Plan. I put the registration link there, and a couple of other resources I want you to be aware of that NCIPL is very involved in. It's called People Power NC. And we have a website, a collective website called fossilfreenc.org. So you can click on that. And I want to highlight the 12 principles for a North Carolina carbon plan in the public interest. These are very values-based and something that we want every person in North Carolina to understand, that this carbon plan that is being reviewed by the North Carolina Utility Commission right now will affect all of us and the entire future of the state. And decisions are being made this fall that are very, very important that all of us can be involved in. NCIPL is a formal intervener in the carbon plan docket. And I will have a lot more information to share with you about that event. And so I'll just again put the registration for the September 28th direct link, and you can register for that. And finally, Ren Martin, who is my colleague with NCIPL, is up in New York City right now at Climate Week with the United Nations. So they could not be on the call today, but Ren wrote a fantastic Voices piece about the North Carolina carbon plan that's very accessible and a great sort of big picture overviews that can help prepare you. And please share this webinar opportunity for next week far and wide, because again, everybody needs to be a part of the carbon plan discussion in North Carolina. So with that, Laura, I'll give you the last words and we'll send everyone off for a happy and healthy, safe rest of your day.
Oh gosh, Susanna and everybody, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and talk about this. Truly, give us a call, give somebody a call if you want to see if the Duke rebate works for you. I will say each solar provider has a different approach, personality. There's some art that goes into designing a proper system, and collaboration with you as the client is really key to that. So ask questions. If something doesn't make sense, be sure you understand why. And, we are more than happy to help folks as we can.
Awesome. And we are here to help break down barriers and support you all the way through the process. We're gearing up for another legislative cycle, and we are going to get even more rebates, hopefully available for nonprofits if we have anything to say about it. So I just honor each of you. Thank you so much for today. You'll all receive a recording. I'll include the questions as they were written out so that as you're following along with your community, please reach out to Laura. Laura's contact information will be at the end of the slide deck, and we're here to serve. So go and be well, be fruitful, honor this life and the beautiful. As I like to say, when I'm in the halls of justice, we need to be harnessing the energies from the heavens above instead of from the heavens below, which is where fossil fuels come from. So let's all activate, be educated, inspire, and mobilized for a fossil-free North Carolina. And we'll see you next week on the Carbon Plan webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.